Allow people to join our group. We will start in just a second. I can see that there are quite a few people on the call, and I appreciate you attending this evening. So give us another few minutes, and once our room is full, I'll begin. All right. Just a couple of things before we start. I do want to thank Ms. Sandridge for inviting me to present this evening. I wish I could be there in person, but we are just trying to stay warm here in Baton Rouge, and I certainly wasn't going to try to cross the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge tonight. There is going to be a Q&A after the session, so please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box and we will discuss those afterwards. Okay, so many of you have heard that there are a lot of changes going on this FAFSA season. We usually get an early start in October, but Federal Student Aid has done a major overhaul to their platform. And so it is causing a couple of issues. I don't know if any of you have already tried to start the FAFSA, but it isn't a soft launch at this time. So we're kind of just feeling it out. And personally, I do a FAFSA every academic year, although my children are grown, just to kind of get a feel for it. And even I'm waiting until that time. But what we do know, um, we will discuss this evening. So I want to begin by talking about the college financial aid process, and it's important to understand all of the expenses that you should plan to incur when you're in school. These are going to include the student's equipment, books, and supplies, personal expenses that the student will incur um, if they're living away from home, room and board, of course, if they're going to be living on campus, and then tuition and fees, which are the largest portion of your expenses. But you do need to keep in mind that there are other expenses that you're going to incur. But the good news is that financial aid is available from the U.S. Department of Education, state of Louisiana, the college or career school that you choose, and then nonprofit and private organizations like Leela. Now, there are three types of federal student aid, and I like to reorder these. First of all, you're going to be have the opportunity to be considered for grants. That's your free money. I like to put the earned money in second place. That's your federal work study. And then your student loans would come in last place. Now, this is a snapshot of all federal student aid programs for the 23-24 academic year. But these could change and usually do change a bit every July 1st. You'll have the federal Pell Grant, there's the FSEOG, the Teach Grant, the Service grant, Iraq and Afghanistan, although this year it's going to be a first responder grant. Then you have your federal work study dollars, and then your federal direct loans, which will include the subsidized, unsubsidized, and direct plus loans, which are for parents. It's important to understand what federal work study is, and it's a great opportunity for students to earn dollars while they're on their college campuses. These are very flexible um, work schedules. So students can go to class, work a bit in the department that they're assigned to, leave to take a test. Perhaps they'll be allowed to study if there's not a lot going on at their offices. So these are great opportunities for students. These work study jobs are administered by the financial aid office at your college. So make sure if you're interested, and hopefully you will be, because these jobs look great on a student's first professional resume. You can check with the financial aid office to see what's available and to let them know that you're interested in being considered. Now, as far as the student loans go, it's really important to understand the difference between the different types of direct loans. These loans are awarded through the financial aid offices at your college. But when you get your financial aid offer, it's important to know the difference between the sub and the unsubbed loan. You could be offered both. The subsidized federal direct loan is an interest-free loan, but only while the student is in school or ceases to attend. So the interest is waived on this type of loan while the student is attending classes. Um, the unsubsidized loan is available for almost everyone, but interest is accruing while the student is in school. So remember to always accept the sub portion first of your offer. You could possibly receive those 4 years of interest-free loans. You can remember this by telling yourself that the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that type of loan. Now, all of these monies can be used at public and private four-year colleges, community colleges, career and technical schools for part-time or online college courses. But to access them, you must complete the free application for federal student aid, known as the FAFSA. Be aware that there are deadlines. You will have specific priority financial aid deadlines, perhaps from your college. Many of those deadlines have been pushed forward a bit, so make sure you're checking on each of your colleges and what their deadlines are. The state of Louisiana has a deadline if you are applying for the TOPS scholarship. And then there's a federal deadline. That is usually at the end of your academic year. And you can wait until a little bit later to complete the FAFSA. However, the money is awarded on a first come, first served basis. So we do encourage you to complete as soon as possible.
I understand. Yeah. And we don't get
Who can complete the FAFSA? Of course, U.S. citizens and U.S. nationals, those with a green card or an arrival departure record, those students with battered immigrant status, and also those that have a T visa. Now, remember that the student must have one of these documents, but the parents do not have to. The parents can contribute and sign a student's FAFSA without one of these documents. Before you start the FAFSA, you do want to make sure that you are gathering all of the documents that you're going to need to complete the form, and that'll make it a much quicker process. These documents will include the student and parents' most recent Social Security cards, the student and parents' federal income tax returns from the tax year 2022, all W-2s received by the student or his parents during 2022, and then your bank statements and investment accounts balances will all be asked to be reported as of the date you submit your FAFSA. Now, the first step is going to be to create your federal student aid ID. And I understand from Ms. Sandridge that all of the students have completed their FSA IDs this year, and hopefully their parents have as well. If you, the parent, has not created your FSA ID yet, I want to play a brief YouTube video from Federal Student Aid to let you kind of know about the process, why you're completing the process and creating your ID, and how to do that.
Perhaps you're a student, parent, or loan borrower who needs to apply for financial aid, electronically sign your FAFSA form, or access other benefits on studentaid.gov. To take full advantage of all our resources and log into studentaid.gov, you'll have to first create an FSA ID. Your FSA ID gives you access to Federal Student Aid's platform and can serve as your legal signature. Your FSA ID is your account username and password. To prepare to create your FSA ID, have your Social Security number, mobile phone, and/or your personal email address handy. To start, navigate to studentaid.gov and select Create Account. Once you're on the Create Account page, select the Get Started button. If you are completing a FAFSA form and are considered a dependent student, keep in mind that you will need to create your own separate FSA ID using your own personal information. A mobile phone number, email address, and Social Security number can be associated with only one FSA ID. For helpful tips throughout the FSA ID creation process, select the question mark icons that display next to each field. Next, you'll create your username, enter an email address, and create your password. We recommend not using your school-based email address, since you will need to access your federal student aid account after you graduate. Make sure you don't include private information such as your name or date of birth as part of your password. Quick tip: remember, an email address can be associated with only one username and password. Next, enter your permanent address and mobile phone number. Indicate if you want to use your mobile phone for account access. We highly recommend this option, as it allows you to use your mobile for two-step verification and will help you access your account if you forget your username or password in the future. After selecting Continue, you'll be prompted to choose your communications preferences. On the Communications Preferences screen, select if you'd like to receive required communications from us via email or by postal mail. We recommend email. Besides the required communications, we'll occasionally send you informational communications about grants, student loan forgiveness, or income-based repayment plans you may qualify for. You can opt to receive these by email, text message, or both, or choose not to receive informational communications. You'll also have the option to select English or Spanish as your preferred language for the communications we send you. Next, you'll select 4 challenge questions and answers. Memorize or keep these answers in a safe place in case you need them to help access your account in the future. Choose a question using the drop-down and add your answer in the text box. Select Show Answer to see your answer as you type it. Your answers are not case sensitive. You're almost there. On this step, you can review your information and confirm everything looks correct. If you need to make a correction, select the Edit button within that tile of information. After ensuring your information is correct, review and agree to the terms and conditions at the bottom of the screen. Now you'll add two-step verification to safeguard your account. Whenever you sign in, we'll send a secure code to make sure it's really you. You can choose whether you prefer email, text message, or an authenticator app. We'll begin with your phone number. Select the Verify button under SMS verification. You will automatically be sent a 6-digit secure code. At the same time, a pop-up window will open. Enter the code and select the Continue button. You'll see a green verified icon appear that tells you you're successful. Next, verify your email address. Select the Verify button. You will automatically be sent a 6-digit secure code. At the same time, a pop-up window will open. Enter the code and select the Continue button. You'll see the same verified icon, confirming that you verified your email. You'll also see a green box confirming that your two-step verification is ready to go. We also suggest setting up an authenticator app, which provides the most security of the two-step verification methods. Select Set up an authenticator app. A pop-up window will open. Follow the steps you see there. First, download an authenticator app from the mobile app store or use one you've already downloaded. Next, you can either scan the QR code with your authenticator app or copy the key into your authenticator app. Then select Continue. Another pop-up window will appear. Enter the secure code generated by your authenticator app and select the Finish button. You've done it. Two-step verification is enabled. But what if you're in a situation where you can't use the other two-step verification methods? Don't lose heart. You can use a backup code. Your backup code is generated automatically when you enable two-step verification. Store your code in a safe place until you need it. Congratulations, you've successfully created your FSA ID. If you entered an email address, you will receive a confirmation email. Make sure you note your username and password and keep them in a safe place. You can begin using your account immediately, but it will take 1 to 3 days for your information to be verified by the Social Security Administration. Some of your actions in the site will be limited until your information is verified. However, with your newly created FSA ID, you can immediately complete and sign a first-time FAFSA form. You can also use your FSA ID to access your dashboard, review your loan balance, and explore additional dashboard features. You are now able to take control of your federal student aid journey and access all studentaid.gov has to offer.
So many of you perhaps have already created your FSA IDs, and I'm speaking to parents directly. If you have an older sibling, or perhaps you were in college, you could possibly already have your ID. And yes, you will use this to submit your students' FAFSA as well. So no need to create a new ID, but please log into that FSA ID and make any updates necessary to your contact information, your mailing address, email address, mobile phone. Go ahead and verify any of that information. Now, years ago, there was only a one-step verification process. So if you didn't set up the 2 steps, you will definitely want to go back into your ID and verify that second step. And remember that you want to record all of this information because you must submit your FAFSA every year to be eligible. Now, this is the sheet that we use when working with students. If you're interested in receiving it, I'm happy to send it your way. It's just a very easy to view, and we have live links within it, but it kind of takes you in the 3 steps that we've set forth and lets you know the documents that you need to complete. So please feel free to request this, but definitely record your information. Now, once you're ready to begin, you'll want to start the 24-25 FAFSA if you're a senior in high school, because that is the year that you will be requesting federal student aid. You will log in with your created FSA ID, username, and password, and then you'll identify your role. Are you the student who wants to complete your section of the FAFSA, or are you logging in as the parent to contribute? When you do log in, you'll see the information that is uh, up to date in the FSA ID. If you see that you need to make changes to that, you'll want to do that now. You'll want to go back into the settings and change any information or update any, because this year more than ever, we're going to be very reliant upon the information within that FSA ID to be able to accurately submit the FAFSA. Let's consider, let's say that the student in this case is going to be beginning the FAFSA himself. He will have to provide consent for federal student aid to gather his information from the IRS and drop it into his FAFSA. Even if you did not complete a tax return in 2022, you still must provide consent for them to check with the IRS. You'll begin with the personal circumstances portion of the FAFSA, and you can see that this student has 5 sections to complete before he can submit the FAFSA. Information about himself. I'm not going to go through every screen that you're going to see. It does use skip logic. Some of you will see more information than others. Some will be asked more questions than others. But I want to go over some high points. Students who are entering college for the first time, even if you have taken dual enrollment classes or you have clubbed out of some college courses, for financial aid purposes, you want to state that you are a first-year freshman. You'll want to, I let federal student aid know if you're an independent or dependent student. Now, many of you may say, well, I'll be 18 by the time that I start college. Certainly, I'll be considered independent. However, there are specific questions that a student will be asked to determine whether he is dependent and must provide parental information or independent so that he will not have to provide. And these are the dependency status questions. I'd like to quickly go over them. The student will be asked if he is currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces or is a veteran of the Armed Forces. The student will be asked if he has children or other people who live with him and whom he provides more than half of their support. At any time since he turned 13, was he an orphan? Was he a ward of the court or in foster care? Or was he emancipated? Or perhaps the student is in legal guardianship. If a student can answer yes to just one of these questions, he will be considered independent and will not be asked for his parents' information. However, every other student should report that he is a dependent student if he cannot answer one of these questions and provide his parents' information to be eligible for federal student aid. The student will then be taken through a series of questions about his parents. This section is used to determine which parents are going to serve as contributors on the student's FAFSA. And more than ever, we are encouraging students and parents to complete this form together because students are not always aware of special situations that involve their parents. Basically, those questions are going to be determined by the marital status of the student's parents. So if the student lives with both of his biological or legal parents, they could be adoptive parents, he will provide information about both of them in his FAFSA, and they will both be considered contributors. Now, if a student's parents are married and living together, you'll report both of them. If a student's parents are not married, but they are living together in the same household with the student, those parents must both serve as contributors. But what if the student's parents do not live together? Maybe they're separated, divorced, were never married, living in different households. In that case, the student will be asked to provide information and invite the parent who provided him with the most financial support in the past 12 months to serve as a contributor on his FAFSA. And then if that parent himself is remarried, then the step parent will also contribute. So I know this is very new to a lot of you who have already had older children and you've already submitted FAFSAs. This is a new twist this year. Now, and we have situations like this where the parents will say, well, we're separated or divorced, but we each provide the same amount of financial support to the student. Who should we choose? And in that case, federal student aid asks that the parent with the larger amount of income and assets report their information on the student's FAFSA. At this time, the student will be asked to provide the parent's first last name as reported on their most recent Social Security card, and this must match what the parent has put on his FSA ID, the date of birth for that student and for that parent, and that parent's Social Security number. So you can see where this is important. This is all within the student section. So it is important that you are there with your child. I know my children don't know this information about me. So you'll want to make sure that you're guiding them in the right direction. Next, they'll move over into the student demographic information. They'll ask information about the student's finances. If he worked in 2022, you want to report that information. He'll be asked to provide a list of colleges that he's interested in applying to. Now, this year, this FAFSA will accept up to 20 schools within the FAFSA. So you'll want to report all of those schools. It's a lot easier to report them now than it is to go back in and add those schools later. If you're applying to if you're intending to apply to more than 20 colleges, you will submit the first 20 by signing and completing and submitting the FAFSA. Once it's processed, you can go back in and add an additional 20. And then on and on. I know many students we've talked to do apply to quite a few. So this can be a tedious process, but it's very important. You can see that this student has completed all of the sections of his FAFSA. He'll want to make sure that he's using the drop-down box over to the right-hand side to open up the FAFSA to show every question he was asked and his answer to that question. It's a lot easier to make those corrections now before he signs the FAFSA than it is to go back in and make those updates. If you've already submitted your FAFSA, and we do have quite a few students, we've heard that over 1 million, close to 2 million students have already submitted FAFSAs around the country. Because of the soft launch, you will not be able to make those FAFSA corrections possibly until the very beginning of February. So if you haven't started yet, make sure that you're checking over for accuracy. The student will be told that his parents have been invited to contribute. These are the parents that were listed on this student's FAFSA. You can see the date that the email invitations were sent to the two parents. And then it's time for the student to sign. Now, because the student's FAFSA is not completed because he does have contributors, the student will not be able to submit his FAFSA. He will send the invitations on to his parents. His parents will complete the parent portion and they themselves will sign and submit it. This is sort of a prototype of an email that the parent contributors will receive, letting them know that the student has invited him to contribute, why he's contributing, the importance of his contribution, so that he can then within the email, click on the link to contribute to that student's FAFSA. The parent will log in using his username and password and again provide consent to have his information downloaded from the IRS and dropped into the FAFSA. This is mandatory this year. You must provide consent for your child to receive federal student aid, even if you're unable to link to the IRS, or perhaps you didn't file a return in 2022, you still must provide this consent. Information about the parents will be asked, the demographics, what their marital status is, how many students they have in college, how many students in their household, and then their personal finances. They will be asked if they received any of these federal benefits, participated in any of these programs. So make sure you're looking through this section carefully. The parent will be asked how he filed. Although you've consented to have the IRS download your information into the FAFSA, you will have to have a copy of your return to get some specifics about it. As I mentioned, you'll be asked about your family size, and this is the family of the contributor that the student has identified within his form. You will be asked if you filed a return, and then there are a couple of questions that you may have to enter manually, but a majority of these are going to be downloaded from the IRS directly. Then the parent will see their FAFSA summary. His personal identifiers, demographics, financials will all be reported here. You can use the arrows over to the right of each section to see all of the questions the parent was asked and his answers to them. And there are hyperlinks within these sections, so that if you have to go back to a specific question, just press on the hyperlink. It will take you directly back into the FAFSA to make that correction before you sign. Once the parent signs and submits the FAFSA, then the FAFSA will be marked as complete. A lot of people who have completed the FAFSA are going back to take a look at the status. They may be seeing that their FAFSA is in review. This is due to the soft launch. So make sure that you are doing your best to answer any questions that you're asked, but we do not believe that any of this information is going to be processed until the end of January. The parent will then receive information that his child's FAFSA was submitted, and the student will receive information that his contributors have completed their portion of the FAFSA. Now, if you're in a situation where you do not live with your parents, perhaps you lived with a grandparent, or aunts, uncles, neighbors, you want to make sure that you are not providing information about those parties. You only want to provide information about your legal parents. Now, if say you live with your grandparents and they're not your legal guardians, they are not your legal parents. So if you are in legal guardianship, remember you're independent. You will not need any adults' information in your FAFSA. So make sure you understand the terminology used within the FAFSA. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to your counselor, Ms. Sandridge. Now, once the FAFSA is submitted, it will be sent directly to the financial aid offices for review, and they will begin to determine your net price. And this is the cost of attendance at their college, whether you're staying on campus, off campus, whatever your situation is. They'll begin to try to determine any grants and scholarships available to help you pay for that cost of attendance so that they can determine and report to you your net price. And this is the amount that the student and or his parents will be responsible for paying. Although there's talk of a universal financial aid offer, that is not the case at this time. You will receive it in many formats depending upon that college financial aid office's procedures, but you will be shown the cost of attendance for your student. Any grants and scholarships will be line itemed to show you what the student is being offered. Loans will be offered and line itemed to allow you to accept that money to pay for your net price. And then, of course, work study will be determined as well, so that you can get a good idea of what you're going to have to come out of pocket for. You always want to accept your financial aid in this order. Your grants and scholarships are free money that does not have to be paid back. In second place here, they've put federal work study. You've already earned this money and you don't have to repay it, but your student loans do have to be repaid. So make sure that you are borrowing wisely. I know that you've already been looking for scholarships. Ms. Sandridge is great about posting these on her webpage. You can find these at the colleges that you're applying to. This is considered institutional aid. Private and nonprofit organizations offer scholarships. Local businesses, communities, perhaps your parents' employer offers scholarships to the children of their employers. So make sure that you are looking for this money, because the more scholarships that you do earn, the more you're decreasing your student loan debt. So keep up the great work with that. Leela is offering a monthly FAFSA completion scholarship. One lucky student every month will win. So we hope that you're applying for this. If you're planning to apply for the FAFSA, because there's a delay this year, we are offering students the option to apply now if they are planning to complete their FAFSA. You can use these QR codes to apply for these dollars. We also have a Choose Louisiana scholarship. This is for students who are enrolled in a college in Louisiana, or for those who are planning to enroll in a college in Louisiana. We do require, however, that if you do win one of these scholarships, you provide us with information about your enrollment there, and you must be enrolled to win. This is for undergraduates, graduate students, perhaps your parents are in college or older siblings. Everyone is eligible to apply. If you have exhausted all your opportunities for federal and state grants and aid, and also private scholarships and institutional aid, Leela does administer a nonprofit education loan program with very low interest rates if you need these monies. We are still working on our FAFSA completion workbook. If you're interested in receiving this, once it has been published, I'm happy to forward it on to you, but I will be sending it in electronic form to your counselor once it's been completed. This is my contact information. If you do have questions about the FAFSA itself, I'm happy to help. Please email me directly at carmichael@lila.org and I will respond to your requests. Now I can see that we have quite a few chats. A lot of messages here going on, so I'm just going to start from the beginning.
Miss Anne,
Yes.
one that came up a lot that I actually didn't know the answer to was if both parents need to make an FSA ID, and how do they know which parent needs to make an FSA ID?
That's a very good question. And we are seeing there are, I'll go ahead and say, a couple of glitches in the form at this time, and this is kind of vague when a student does enter information about his parents and sends those invitations on to his parents. If the parents are married or living together in the same household as the student, only one of those parents needs to create an FSA ID to sign the FAFSA. Now, that is if the parents filed a 1040 and their status was married jointly. Only one parent will have to access the IRS, download information, drop it into the FAFSA, and sign it. But if you're in a situation where you're in the same household with both of your legal parents and they filed married separately, both parents will have to have an ID because each of them will have to go to the IRS individually and download their information into the FAFSA. Now, one thing we have seen is that students who are listing both of their parents and providing two email addresses within that section, both of those parents are being sent an invitation to contribute to that student's FAFSA. If your parents filed married jointly, only one email address should be listed, and that should be the email address of the parent who has the FSA ID. Because what we've seen happening is if the student sends both, provides both email addresses, that second parent is getting the invitation. He's trying to go in to sign. There's no place for him. You know, it's sort of an open-ended issue. So I know that they're trying to resolve a lot of that. I hope that that answered that question. If not, let's talk further. I'm happy to talk with you individually.
Another one was, do you know when the quote unquote soft launch will be over? I've seen several different things. So I didn't know if maybe you had some good insight.
We've been told that it's going to be late January, if not early February. But Ms. Sandridge, I don't know if you've seen the issues that are being posted by federal student aid. There are quite a few. So a lot of parents are being encouraged, and we're encouraging people. We're not working individually with them at this time. We're trying to prolong that until the very last week of January or early February, because we do know that even if you complete your FAFSA now, the financial aid offices are not going to receive that information until February. So we're hoping if people kind of prolong it a bit, that they'll get all of their issues worked out, and then they won't have to go back in and make the edits. So if I was a parent right now of a high school student or college student, I would be waiting until February 1. I see some other, quite a few other questions. Do you want me to go through these individually, or Miss Sandridge, were you able to answer them within the chat itself?
I was able to answer most within the chat. If you want to just glance over them to make sure I answered them correctly, but I'm pretty sure I got most of them done. Those two were the ones I wasn't sure.
Okay. And it's like you really aren't sure quite what's going, what you're going to be presented with until you get into the FAFSA itself. So as I mentioned, it's always good to work on this together as a family. And I'm going over, I am going to be recording this and sending it over to Miss Sandridge so she can distribute it. Think we covered that. You already have an FSA ID for another child. No, do not create another ID. Actually, they won't allow you to. But if you've forgotten your information, just go back to the FSA ID site and retrieve that information and then make sure everything is correct.
We had one that just came in, Miss Ann. If the parent with the ID is not the parent that will be listed as the primary contributor, does that matter?
It doesn't matter. Either parent can sign the FAFSA, but it does have to be okay, now I've lost my train of thought. It does have to be, the email has to be sent to the parent with the FSA ID. So either one can contribute, but whomever has the FSA ID must be able to link to the IRS to be able to download that tax return. And yes, both parents do not necessarily need an FSA ID. I'm looking at one of the earlier questions. Just remember that if your parents are married, filing their tax return married jointly, only one parent needs to have that FSA ID to link and sign. Unless you've filed your taxes for 2022 with the status of married separately. Has anybody already started or completed their FAFSA? We've had several questions from parents who have started the FAFSA and then run into a glitch or answered the wrong question. It's a little more difficult during the soft launch to go back and make those corrections, but they are allowing parents and students to delete their FAFSAs. So if you have not submitted yet and you feel like you've made a couple of errors or you want to go back in and you're not able to make those changes because of the soft launch, you can always delete your FAFSA and then begin again. However, if you've already submitted it, you're going to have to wait toward the end of January or early February to make those FAFSA corrections.
Miss Ann, there's a couple of questions that are asking how, when you're considering parents who are separated or divorced, and you're trying to figure out who is the one who has contributed the most over those 12 months, do you include child support in that, or is it something separate?
You will be asked about child support within the FAFSA itself, but yes, child support would be taken into consideration when trying to determine which parent to report on the FAFSA.
And then we had one other that just came in that was asking about do you know a little bit about the first responders grant, what that is?
These are for, of course, first responders, not necessarily Iraq and Afghanistan survive children of those that were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan wars. This is all first responders who were killed in the line of duty. This is money available for children of those people. And it will be explained in a little more detail within the FAFSA itself. If you are in that situation and you submit your FAFSA, you can always contact the financial aid office at your college directly to let them know about your situation. And I'm sure each college is going to have their own procedure about how they gather information about that situation, but that is also included this year. We've heard that parents who have already and students who've already submitted their FAFSAs who were just in that general category of both parents married, living in the same household with the student, filing married jointly, are really seeing that this is a quick process. Of course, being able to complete in 15 minutes or so. So I know that it's going to be um, definitely an improved FAFSA, maybe not overall, but for a majority of the people that are applying. Now, if you have students or parents that do not have social security numbers, um, those people in the past were not able to create FSA IDs. They will create IDs this year. They will be asked to identify themselves in a different manner other than with their social security number. But when you log into the FSA ID system, you will see a checkbox that says, I do not have a social security number. You will check there and go through a different process. If you are in that situation, and you do need help completing your FSA ID, we're happy to help you. I'm looking back through. If you see anything else, what if parents are divorced? Which parent applies? And Ms. Sandridge did answer that. Trying to get a little bit further down. Yes, you can start the form, you can save it, and you can go back and complete it later. We don't know how that's going to affect the soft launch application, but I have not heard that anyone's had trouble with that. But you do have a 45-day period. Once the student begins the FAFSA, he has 45 days for it to be completed, or it's going to be wiped off the system and he will have to begin again. So just remember that if you've already begun the FAFSA, remember that you do need to complete it within that 45-day period.
Miss Ann, we had one more that just came in. Does an IRA, a Roth IRA, or a 401k need to be included as a part of the parent's assets?
If it was for education purposes. So if you have a 529 or you have an IRA that was specifically designed for educational expenses, that does have to be reported. Your personal 401k that's designed for your retirement does not have to be reported. The value of your family home does not have to be reported. But of course, if you have any investment properties, that information does have to be reported. You're going to find that there's going to be it used to be a question mark. I believe there's a question mark beside each question over to the right-hand side. And when you get to those asset questions, please look at that question mark. It will give you a great deal of information on exactly what is to be reported and which assets are not. So make sure you're looking over that as well. So the FAFSA is used for postgraduate studies as well. If a student is in graduate school, he will want to complete the FAFSA. He will be considered an independent student. He's in graduate school. So that's a plus. But the Pell Grant is only available, and the FSEOG are only available to undergraduate students. So you don't have as many grant dollars available, but you will be considered for federal student loans for graduate school if you complete the FAFSA itself. Anything else? You should be able to put each of your full names and social security numbers. Just remember that you do need your most recent social security card. We've had people in the past who have had trouble signing the FAFSA. They've gone through and through it and they cannot find an error. But remember, if you are remarried and you did not have a new social security card issued in your new married name, you will have to use your prior name. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're creating your FSA IDs. Grab the most recent Social Security card to create your Federal Student Aid ID. All right. Did you answer the question about the son is a junior and he's the third? Yes, you did. When you do receive your federal student aid, your financial aid offer from your college, it's going to be for the academic year. So if you receive a $7,000 Pell Grant, that's for the 2 semesters, or 3 if you're going to the summer semester as well. That's spread out over the academic year. Any other questions? If you have a situation that you don't want to speak to about on a public forum, please feel free to talk to Ms. Sandridge about your situation, or email me directly and we can get a conversation going. You do not have to have your actual social security card. You're not going to have to provide it to anyone, but we do encourage people to just have all your information on hand just to make sure. If you have an error, some people, actually have errors on their social security cards. Your birth certificate might have one name, your social security card might have your name spelled differently. For FAFSA purposes, when creating your FSA ID, it must match what Social Security has on file. So that's why we encourage you to just gather up your bank statements or your 1040s and W-2s just to make sure that you're not making any errors. It'll save you some time maybe later. There are no documents that will be uploaded within the FAFSA itself. The FAFSA is just a generic federal form to gather students' information and parents' information, contributors, to pass it on to the financial aid office. And those are the folks that are going to be going over your information with a fine-tooth comb. They might ask you for copies of your, bank statements or your assets, or they are the people that are going to have to verify your information. So they may be asking you for these documents. But that will be after the FAFSA has been submitted and processed and sent on to their offices. Anybody else, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please feel free to do that. Ms. Sandridge, do you have any other comments?
I don't. Coach Cannon would want me to remind everyone that tomorrow is a mass dress day. He's repeated that several times in several emails that I've gotten throughout the day. So just as a reminder, we are back at school tomorrow and it is a mass dress.
Hi, yes, I have a question, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your help. I have my own FAFSA, and you indicated that I would use mine, but I would just have to complete the student portion for my student. Where on that FAFSA form do I add his information? So if I have my FAFSA pulled up and I'm looking at my dash, how do I add his information onto this?
Okay, so you are creating a FAFSA for yourself, or are you talking about that FSA ID?
No, the FSA ID, like if I was in grad school and I already have one, do I use that one?
You will use that FSA ID. You will use it to start your FAFSA. You will use it
Okay.
to contribute to your son's FAFSA. So you will have your own FAFSA. You'll log in with your username and password. You'll submit your own FAFSA for your graduate studies. Then your son will log in with his username and password, his FSA ID. He will complete the student section of his FAFSA. He will send you an invitation via email to complete the parent portion of his FAFSA. You will use your FSA ID to log in to his FAFSA through that link that he sent you via email, and you will complete your portion of his FAFSA. Does that?
Okay, thank you very much. It does. It does.
Okay.
It's just a lot of information. I mean, yes, I don't want to take anybody else's time, but that does help. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I can see that people are leaving our session. Thanks again for having me. Keep my information on file. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. And thank you again, Ms. Sandridge, for inviting me to present.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Ann.
You're welcome. Good night. Oh, do we have another question? Let's see. Just a lot of thank yous. Thank you. Thank you for thanking me. That's very sweet.